Is raw milk legal in Russia?
Is what?
Raw milk.
Raw milk?
Raw milk. Fresh, raw, unpasteurized milk. It's illegal in Wisconsin.
Yes, no, it is legal in Russia, right? Yes, it is legal. And in most countries it's legal. Unpasteurized milk, yeah. You can smuggle it.
We got a couple of questions. We got questions over here.
Okay, sorry about that.
As I pursue the internet on occasion, I come across some interesting comments and articles, but I'd like to, I've noticed many that are now talking about United Nationism, worldwide order by, quote, the United Nations. Can you shed any of your insight as to your thoughts on that particular world order type thing? Thank you.
Right, well, United Nations, yes, well, I would say that there's people who are promoting world government, like we don't have enough government, we should have a government on the top of our governments, regulating us and whatnot. This idea is pretty old. I think that one of the first universalists that would be the Wilhelm II, the German Kaiser. And he had congresses about that and whatnot, that there will be no wars, no whatever. However, I would say that the true United Nations, in the true sense, that it will be free trade between people. That's what I think, that if free trade, free movement of people, this is very important. And if you have a bunch of socialist governments conferring with each other in New York, this is not freedom at all. This is not freedom at all. It's egregious that Libya, whom right now our beloved leader is bombing, that Libya was chairing a commission on human rights of the United Nations. Can you imagine? Human Rights Commission of the United Nations, they had countries, they had Libya, Syria, they had Cuba, they had Belarus, so they had almost, it's kind of Orwellian kind of thing. It's just amazing. Then when I lived in Moscow, I attended many conferences of International Labour Organization in Geneva, Switzerland, which is part of the United Nations. So sometimes it's evil, sometimes it's stupid, sometimes it's an amazing waste of funds. We are paying about 1/3 of all expenses of the United Nations. For what reason? For them slamming us, for them trashing us on all their conferences and whatnot. This was the most unbelievable that we funded this conference in South Africa, in which U.S. delegation, we funded all of it 100%. U.S. delegation was forced to walk away, to walk out. So this is definitely, I would say, that kind of government international. People should be friends with people everywhere, but when governments are friends with each other, sometimes you should be suspicious about that, I think. That's extreme. Then also the whole idea of universal government, when you would have a majority, you would have Chinese Indian majority, right? That would be our rulers. Yes, if you would promote ideas of democracy to that absurdity.
Dr. Maltsev, would you care to comment on your route from advisor to Gorbachev to professor at Carthage?
The question was, how did I kind of make the transition? Well, in the Soviet Union, I was born in a family. My grandfather was murdered by Stalin, and my father's life was completely destroyed by that. He was a son of enemy of the people. He had this label attached to him all his life, and so that was pretty sad. And so I was an exchange student in England in 1970s. Well, exchange student I think it's an oxymoron as well. I don't think anybody was exchanged for me. And so I definitely I wanted to defect to England at that time. But I couldn't, because my father was alive, and my family would be thrown out of jobs, thrown out of their apartments, if not to send to Siberia. And so I wasn't thinking of defecting at that time. And I was just on on a speaking engagement tour to Finland on behalf of the Soviet government to talk about perestroika, what are these reforms of Mr. Gorbachev's are all about. And it was just kind of like, I would say, completely unexpected for me. It was kind of a bad day for me. That day I had an interview with a Swedish TV. And in the interview, I said, well, if you like Mr. Gorbachev, because the lady who was interviewing me was praising Gorbachev. I said, if you like him so much, we can sell him to you for a reasonable amount of sausage and margarine and maybe washing detergent. And then I returned back to my hotel, was a message already from Soviet embassy in Helsinki. And they kind of made the point that we will talk in Moscow about that, whom we are sitting and for what. And so I had kind of a pretty bad aftertaste. And then the same day I had a speech at the Ministry of Finance of Finland, and the speech was, and I noticed that they serving some finger food and kind of some food in the reception, to have reception after. And I was thinking how wonderful, I will eat food here, I will save a lot of money, and I will buy more. Because when I went to Finland, it's kind of funny, I think maybe that we would, if you don't mind, that's, I'll try to make a long story short, but when I went to Finland, everybody came, my colleagues, they would come to my office, and all men and all women, they would ask either for lipsticks and mascara, or floppy disks, the serious ones, floppy disks. And all men were uniform in what they asked. They were asking for condoms. And why for condoms? Because everybody was scared of AIDS in the Soviet Union at that time. And so, because Soviet government was deliberately making rumors that AIDS was invented by US Army in Fort Detrick, Maryland, and to kill everybody in the Soviet Union. And I asked my sister, who was an immunologist, she was laughing like that, and she said, oh, come on, this is the strangest thing possible. Can you imagine? How would they infect us? That's, then how they were just sitting waiting until we will die? No, like that. So I didn't believe that myself, but everybody else wanted this, so I promised. And so I thought, well, I will eat here, save more money, and buy more of this, and then I give it to him. And then to make a long story short again, one gentleman was blocking my way to food. He was asking me questions on and on and on and on. And I was thinking, how can I just maybe walk around him? And he was saying, well, you're so critical of communists. Are you afraid of going back to Russia? And if I would say no, then that would be probably the case. I probably will still be in Russia. But I was so upset by this whole kind of thing. I said, do you have other options? He said, when we are looking for options, we can do something. I said, well, go ahead and do it. And I walked around here and put my stuff on my plate. And why did I do that? It's also not many people realize that Soviet Union, evil empire, the superpower number 2, it was so poor that even at the receptions in Kremlin, when you rush into the reception room, you put everything you can on one plate. So it can usually be a stack like this. And then you take as many glasses and pour as much booze or whatever you drink into these glasses, and then you stash everything, you hoard, like a Russian peasant, and then you kind of see that you have a future in this reception. And those who come later, they won't have anything. And, well, except the Politburo members, they had enough. So I kind of was afraid that would happen in Finland, but no, it was enough food, whatever. And then he said, what's the hotel you're staying at? So I told him the name of the hotel. When I came back to the hotel, he called me, he said, would you like to go to Sweden tomorrow morning? And I was thinking, Sweden, what's that for? I looked at my appointment book, I said, no way, I'm all booked. And he was laughing, he said, you cannot squeeze defection into your tight schedule. And only then I realized what he's talking about, the defection. Yeah. So I looked at my appointment book, I said, Friday. And he was laughing again, he said, Friday's defection day. He said, may I ask why? I said, well, on Friday I'm supposed to go back to Moscow, and that would be very good, and Finns would not think that I'm lost. And so I ended up in crossing borders in all this fancy ways, and then was debriefed I went to the U.S. Embassy in Stockholm, Moscow Political Asylum. The Marine officer, he said, okay, sir, but it's Saturday, come back on Monday, embassy is closed. And I said, no, I'm not exiting, because he didn't have any bullets either, so I invited an officer on duty, and it was pretty nice. And then I was debriefed by almost all intelligence services of the West. Some of them, this guy, for example, in Sweden himself, the intelligence service is not intelligent at all, but had the name of Swedish Peace Institute. Swedish Peace Institute, that was the CIA of Sweden. And by many others, by CIA, by British, and whom not. And then after all this, I ended up in New York. And that was kind of funny. In New York, to JFK Airport, and I'm going through customs, and I have these 2 suitcases. One I bought already in Sweden, kind of Western looking, and another was Soviet, Russian looking, very unusual. And I didn't open it, I was just carrying it with me. And the lady, the customs officer, she said, open that. It looked unusual. I opened that, and there is these boxes of condoms and lipstick and other stuff. And she said, is that for private use? And so, business samples, or what is that? And I said, so, private use. I mean, even Soviet economists would say, for private use. And she looked at, she opened my passport. I had a Soviet diplomatic passport with a stamp refugee. She looked at, she said, you're coming for good. I said, yeah, I hope so. And she then smiled here, and she said, I wouldn't let you in with this stuff for a weekend trip. And then she smiled again and said, welcome to the United States.
I have, from Gorbachev to Yeltsin, there looked like there was a window in former Soviet Union, Russia. What happened that were to Putin? What is your...
Right, well, I would say that, just kind of like to be brief on that Gorbachev was, nobody knew whether I mean, even my boss, who was first deputy prime minister of Soviet Union, and we called him the biggest economist in the world. He was bigger than me, 400 pounds probably. And he would come and he would say, I don't know what's happening behind that birthmark. Just, he was completely clueless. Nobody knew what's in his mind with Mr. Gorbachev, because he couldn't be as dumb as he talked. Because he was talking about this human face of socialism and whatnot, and socialist choice, and no, like that. And so his whole idea was to reform socialism rather than get rid of it. Yeltsin was, from that point of view, much smarter. He wanted to get rid of it. His point was that it's not working, it's only mass murder can. And Yeltsin was in the beginning of his time, he was pretty good. He was pretty good, and his speeches, if you would translate his speeches, they would not be something I really like, but they were like Pat Buchanan. Yeah, he would be kind of conservative, nationalist, and whatnot. So, but then, I think, and then his major idea in 1992 was to dismantle KGB, to get rid of that secret police, which murdered 50 million people in the Soviet Union. And so he was trying to do that. And at that time, I'm not following conspiracy theories, but I would say conspiracies happen all the time, left and right, mostly left. And what they did, they changed his bodyguards. Certain General Boris Korshakov was appointed as his chief of presidential detail of his security guards. And Mr. Korshakov was very well known for his charm. He could play all kinds of musical instruments. He was a good singer. He wrote poetry. He was kind of like a very cultured, whatever person. And he immediately began to drink with Yeltsin. They became buddies. And I am thinking that the idea was to remove Yeltsin from political field by doing that. That he had this wonderful friend who was his bodyguard, whatever, and this wonderful friend was sacrificing his liver for the motherland or for the KGB, keeping Yeltsin, because Yeltsin was, for example, very much against the Chechen War, the first Chechen War, 1994. However, Mr. Korshakov and others, they kept him out of the public. Mr. Yeltsin, he could be a great leader of Russia if he wouldn't be so sometimes irresponsible. If you remember, 1991 was a coup d'etat in Moscow when foreign communists took over again. And Mr. Yeltsin, he was extremely, I would say, courageous person. He was on the tanks, he was shaking hands, he was with the people who came to kill him and whatnot. He was pretty good. And then he was a hero of Russia. And I even at that time wrote several articles about Yeltsin, comparing him to Thomas Jefferson. Now I'm ashamed of these articles. Because after all this glory, he disappeared for three months, presumably to write a book. And can you imagine, he wrote this book about himself, Against the Grain, the title is, and then I'm watching Russian television about his press conference, and one journalist, she said, in your book, you said that you were in Chelyabinsk in 1966, and he said, never been there, never did that. And she said, that's in your book, page 73. And so it looks like he even didn't read the book he wrote. So that's the kind of, so that was kind of personal. I think that that's why the people were lured to vote for Putin, who was a champion of judo and jiu-jitsu of the KGB, who didn't drink, who didn't smoke, whatever, because they wanted kind of to have a sober faces in Kremlin. However, they didn't realize that was such a, for me, as a Russian, it's such a tragedy that can you imagine that the proud member of the KGB, unrepentant, he toasts to Stalin in Kremlin and whatnot, that this kind of person was elected by 73% of popular vote at relatively free elections of 2000. Relatively free election. So people, my last article written in Russian was, and published in Russia was, had the characteristic title, meat voted for a meat grinder. And that's exactly what happened. Yes. So now KGB is firmly in place, and Mr. Putin and his spokesman, Mr. Medvedev, will be probably changing each other the positions of president and prime minister, taking turns, playing this role of the good cop, bad cop that they do all the time. So it's pretty sad. Russia is, what will happen, Churchill used to say, Russia is the only country in the world with unpredictable past. So it's pretty difficult to predict future for them. So future is unknown. But having said that, we're getting there. We're rewriting history all the time as well, I think, as well. So now we have all former heroes became, today I think, you quoted this Harvard guy who said that 4th of July is a reactionary kind of day, black day in the United States history or something. Right? All right, thank you.